Welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts, the broadcast that answers doubts about God, the Catholic Church, science, philosophy, and other worldly topics weird out.
Hello, welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts. Today is Earth Day, and I wanted to talk about the whole celebration of Earth Day and how it pertains to us and the environment, and of course, Catholicism, religion itself, God. Well, today we remember our great and beautiful home, our spaceship, if you will, flying around in the solar system 365 days a year. And of course, I'm referring to the Earth. The Earth is so small, so fragile, in a sense, yet so important to all of us. This planet, unfortunately, has gone through a lot of abuse. Not from earthquakes, storms, asteroids, solar flares, but from a creature that lives on it that sometimes thinks that it is God. This creature I'm referring to is the human being. The reality of the harm caused by human beings is something that we have to really think about. And it has come to a certain extent that we can't afford to not think about the extent of the harm that's being done to our planet by the human race, by ourselves. Now, the reality of the harm, along with the Christian views of a gentleman named John McConnell, led him to begin Earth Day. So John McConnell was the one that started this whole thing of Earth Day, this day of remembering the Earth and trying to focus on restoring her, cleaning her up, keeping her nice and clean, not only for us here still alive now, but for future generations to come. McConnell was born on March 22nd, 1915, and he passed away on October 20th, 2012. He was the son of a Pentecostal traveling preacher. His Christian faith inspired him greatly, and especially in regards to Earth and the environment, and taking care of the Earth and the environment. As a peace activist, he fought for peace, the promotion of science, and the environment. He believed we all have a God-given duty to protect the Earth and each other. John McConnell is correct. We do have an obligation to protect the Earth. We have a duty to protect the Earth. The Earth is our home, like I said in the beginning. It's our spaceship, so to speak. This is all we have ever known in our short existence, by cosmic time, I mean, because the human race has been here for a short time based on the timeline of the cosmos. And in that short time, we have done a lot of damage to the planet. It pains me a lot to see people in the street walking around and they're having a hamburger or soda or something like that, or gum, and they just throw the wrappers and the garbage all over the place, not caring of the harm that they're doing to the environment, to the planet, and whatnot. And also making the neighborhood, the city, look nasty, disgusting, dirty. And it's unfortunate because that's a reflection on us, on the people that lived in the area. If we do not care enough to keep our streets clean, our neighborhoods clean, our parks clean, and what does that say about us? We don't care where we live. We have no concern of the area that we reside in. We must care for our home, not just our neighborhood, not just our home in regards to a house or an apartment or condominium or studio, but our home as in the world, the environment, the whole planet. We must stop polluting it and destroying it. In the Bible, sacred scripture, the book of Numbers, chapter 35, verse 33 says, "Do not pollute the land where you live." And in the book of Jeremiah, it also speaks of human beings defiling the earth, destroying the earth, damaging the earth, not just in a spiritual sense, but also in a physical sense. And we have to take care of the earth. This is something that belongs to all of us, not to just one person. And as Catholics, as Catholic Christians, as Christians in general, as theists in general, whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or whatever you are, I think we are all united in the fact that this world is God's creation. Regardless of whatever name or designation you give to God, I think we pretty much all agree that this is God's creation and we have to care for it. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, God commands man, Adam and Eve, humanity, to care for the earth and all the living things in it. This includes the animals. About a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I saw on the news that they had a white rhino surrounded by guards. And I was trying to figure out what was going on with the whole thing. Because at the same time, there was this other person, a hunter, a lady who was photographed with a giraffe, which I'm going to speak about a bit after this. And I figured this rhinoceros thing had to do with that. But the story was about this white rhinoceros, which is apparently the last one on Earth, a male rhinoceros, white. And it's the last one. And these guards are guarding it from poachers who want to go and kill it just to remove the horn and make ivory things or jewelry, whatever, from it. And they're hoping that this rhino reproduces somehow, that finds a mate and reproduces and continues this specific species of the rhinoceros family. And then speaking on this hunter, this lady, I don't remember her name, but I'm sure you're probably aware of it. This lady, she apparently does hunting or whatnot for a living or a hobby or whatever. And she photographed herself with a giraffe, a dead giraffe laying down on the grass or wherever it was. And she's there laying next to it, taking a so-called selfie with it. And this caused a lot of uproar with activists and whatnot, claiming that this is just evil, immoral, ridiculous. And the actor, comedian, who's also an atheist, Gervais, he also was very outspoken on Twitter, I believe, regarding this photograph. And I agree with him. I agree with him and the other people that are upset about this. I believe it's horrible to kill such a beautiful animal, giraffes. To my knowledge, I never heard of a giraffe attacking anyone, any human being, or any other animal, unless it's probably defending its young. But for the most part, these animals are majestic, beautiful. They're our version of the Brontosaurus. And in the extent that they're huge and they have these long necks. And to just kill this poor animal and lay next to it. And I believe she tried to justify this death, this killing of this animal, as by saying that it was dying already, so she had to kill it. And I have not seen any evidence of that. Um, until I see evidence of that, I believe that's just a deflection from the reality of this killing of this animal. And animals, like I read from, or paraphrase from Genesis, that God, or reference, I should say, from Genesis 1, verse 26, that God commands Adam and Eve to take care of the earth, and the living things must be followed through, obeyed. Now, we could use nature and animals, of course, for food and clothing and things like that. That's okay. That's morally okay. That's ethical. But we have to respect these things, these living things, whether vegetables, trees, plants, or animals. And many people forget that vegetables are living things, plants are living things. So I often tease vegetarians about this who do not eat meat because they feel that you shouldn't kill animals, you shouldn't kill life. But they seem to forget that vegetables are life, they are living. These are plants, plant life, and they are very much alive. So you are killing a life form. But anyhow, as long as these things are being used for good, then it's okay, it's moral. As long as it's being used for food, for clothing, then it is good. But if we're going to go around and shoot animals just because we can, just because we can make these devices called guns and shoot them down and chase them and scare the heck out of them. Just because we have the ability, the free will to do that, doesn't mean we should do that. And that's completely wrong. There's absolutely no reason to go around and kill these precious animals unless it's for necessity, such as food, clothing, and things like that. And also possibly the situation of there's just too many of them and they might starve or kill each other or interfere with the rest of human society. But we should be able to know how to control the situation and not resort to making an entire species go extinct just to preserve our own interests because we're in this planet together. We're animals just like the rest of the non human animals. We have common ancestry, especially with the other hominins, the apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, and so forth. They are our cousins in the animal world. We're part of the animal kingdom. So just because we're human beings and we could think and we have conscience and can develop all kinds of ideas and philosophies and dream does not mean that we're better than the other non-human animals. What makes us unique is that we have a soul. We have the Spirit of God in us, the Ruach, when God breathed life into Adam. That's what makes us special, a special creation, so to speak. Not just because we are human and have certain abilities, and non-human animals do not. But even with that, even those abilities, with that special existence, so to speak, we still cannot and should not go around and abuse other animals and life forms on this planet. We have to take care of them. That was the mandate God gave to Adam and Eve, to care for the earth and all living things. Right now in the tri-state area, New Jersey, upstate New York, Manhattan, New York City, etc. Now there's a big commotion over coyotes appearing and apparently attacked two people or so, whatnot, and they seem to be appearing everywhere, and people are concerned. And when I heard of this news, I was thinking to myself, these animals have a right to be there. I mean, first, coyotes do not attack people most of the time. If they do attack, it's because they're defending their young, which I can possibly say that we all will do that. We all will protect our young and our younger brothers, younger sisters, or children. That's just in us. We have to protect our young. So I don't blame the coyotes for defending their young, their offspring. And of course, the other reason is if they're rabid, they have rabies. Now, these animals, for the most part, they get scared of anything, especially human beings. They do not like associating with human beings. So if you make loud noise, you scream, you throw something near them, not at them, just throw something softly or hard near them, just to make that startling sound, then they will go running off for the most part. And again, these animals have every right to be there. They were here before the settlers came, before the Dutch came to New York City, before the English came. These animals were already there. They have every right to be there. As a matter of fact, before the settlers came, before the 1600s, 1500s, New York City, Manhattan, the island of Manhattan was a huge forest. If you have ever seen the movies King Kong, all three versions of them, the 1933 one, the one made in the 1970s, and the one made in 2005, I believe. They all show the island where King Kong is discovered, and you see this huge forest, jungle type thing with mountains and waterfalls and whatnot. That's how Manhattan used to look like back before the settlers came. That's what they came across when they came to this land. As a matter of fact, the area of Times Square, I was reading one time, the area of Times Square where the Times Square is at, where they dropped the ball or the apple, whatever they call it, on New Year's Eve. That area right there used to be a waterfall. And I read somewhere, I can't remember where I read it from, I think it was an article, that underneath, if you go underneath the ground where the streets are at, underneath the sewer, underneath Times Square, you could still see some of the water trickling, what's left over from this waterfall. So all of this was the home of these coyotes and the beaver, and which I believe is the official animal of New York State. All of these things were already there. These animals were already there. They have every right to be there. And if they're not bothering anybody, then just leave them alone. Don't go and try to kill them, poison them, or whatnot. And that's another thing that upsets me, is that some people like to poison animals just because they deem them an inconvenience. For example, I won't mention any names, but I got upset one time at a priest from the Franciscan order of all people. This order that's supposed to be protective of the ecology, because St. Francis loved animals. He called everything brother and sister. All of creation, he saw it as brother and sister, and rightfully so, because we come from the earth. God created man from the earth. We evolved from the earth. We were not thrown here by extraterrestrials or appeared here out of magic. We come from the earth, from the universe. To quote from Carl Sagan, we were made of star stuff. From the hydrogen and carbon atoms that were formed of dead stars. That's what we were made out of. And so, rightfully so, we can. St. Francis was correct in calling everything brother and sister, because we all come from the same material, the same Mother Earth, if you will. And this Franciscan priest, he was putting rat poison for the pigeons so they could eat it and die. And that upset me a lot, and we got into a big discussion over that. And I was appalled of it, not only because he's trying to kill these beautiful creatures, but because he's a Franciscan. I mean, come on. Why would Holy Father Francis think of that? And I don't mean Holy Father Francis as in Pope Francis, but the Franciscan order typically calls St. Francis the Holy Father Francis. So that bothers me a lot when people try to kill these animals. I mean, I understand they can be pests and whatnot, and they carry disease. That's a different story. But these animals, these pigeons, I mean, the worst thing they could do is make a mess, crapping all over the place. But hello, there's pressure washers, there's soap and water. I mean, just take your hose and hose it off. It's not the end of the world. It's not like they're shooting something that cannot be cleaned or erased from there behind. So why not just clean it up? Dogs do it. We do it. I mean, can you imagine somebody using the bathroom and then somebody else comes and just shoots you or tries to poison you just for doing something naturally? I mean, that just goes to the extent of how the human race can be narcissistic and believe that it deserves everything just because it could think or whatnot. And we have to stand clear of that kind of thinking. We are not gods. We are not gods. We are made in the image of God. It's a big difference, but we are not gods. We don't have the ability to go and destroy nature. We are supposed to take care of it, including the animals and the planet and so forth. And even space, because we're starting to pollute space itself. Around the Earth, there's a huge ring of leftover machinery from satellites just collected there, polluting space. So we're starting to pollute out there in the universe too, unfortunately. That has to stop. And also in Psalm 115, verse 16, we read of how God gives his children, or us, the earth. Now, how do we clean up the earth? How do we take care of it? We must develop technology that does not destroy the environment. Get rid of these carbon emitting things. We could find something better. We must not throw garbage on the streets or fields, but in the right place. Animals look, they smell food from these containers, they go, they get choked up by chewing on plastic and all these different things, and it kills them, it affects them. Not to mention the poisons from these materials. They mess up the reproductive process of the animals, and guess what? We eventually eat the animals, and that messes us up too, genetically. We must recycle things so they won't end up in the landfills. We must conserve water and not let it run without being used. Some people love to wake up in the morning, they brush their teeth, and they leave the water running, as if that's going to do anything to your teeth. Just turn on the water when you're going to use it and shut it off when you're not using it. Same thing with the shower. We must find better energy sources, such as solar power, which powers the entire universe, which is ironic because we use fossil fuels and all these different things where eventually will run out. These things are not eternal. And we had this thing up there in the sky, relatively speaking, this star called the sun, which produces massive amounts of energy. And we could use the energy, and that energy from the sun is going to last another 5 or 6 billion years, according to measurements and calculations. So we have this star, this beautiful star that gives us warmth and feels good on the beach, right? When we lay down on the sand and or in a park somewhere to tan up a little bit or get some vitamin D. We have this beautiful energy source. And guess what? We are getting energy when the sun is going through us. When we eat the vegetables, we are consuming the energy that traveled from the sun to get here and allowed these plants, these vegetables to grow via the process of photosynthesis. And the whole process is a long one, not to get into physics, but briefly, it starts from the center of of the the sun, and it begins as a gamma ray, which is the most powerful source of energy or light. And as it passes through, trying to get through the photosphere, the chromosphere, and so forth, it can't because the radiation around it prevents it from coming out. So it starts bouncing around. The photons starts bouncing around trying to escape, and it eventually does. And as it does, it loses its strength, and it becomes the light, the UV light that we're used to. So it goes through all this process, and then within 8 minutes, it reaches us on Earth. And this process has been going on for billions of years. And we have all that energy that we could use to power all our little technology and gizmos and whatnot. Nature has been doing it for billions of years, powering the entire solar system. Now, in regards to global warming, it's not news that the global temperature is rising. Some people believe this is a hoax, but it clearly is not a hoax. I wish it were a hoax, but it's not. Studies clearly show that the ice caps are melting at an extraordinary rate. This is causing an increase of ocean levels as well as the temperature, pH balance, and salt balance of the world's ocean. While this may not seem like a big deal on paper when we read these studies, in reality it is a big deal. These gradual changes affect the food chain, which in turn affects the many species that reside in the oceans of the world. There are certain species out there that love salt water and some that do not. So when the ice caps start melting, the salt water starts rising and it starts going inland and contaminating the fresh water where these animals evolved to exist in them. And they don't like the salt water and they will eventually die. Moreover, the change of water temperature interferes with the weather patterns, since temperature is part of the whole system that regulates the pressure in the atmosphere, creating weather. The carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere from all the machines that we create, all the fossil fuels and everything that we're burning, traps UV rays, which causes the earth to heat up more. And this causes fluctuations in temperature, which eventually brings about these big storms that we have been seeing lately. All this record snowfall and these storms that flooded Coney Island and all these things out there. And New Jersey, Sandy, and all these different storms. It's a result of this global warming. So we have to really think about what we're doing to our planet, to our home, our world, and not be selfish and just think that we are the only ones that are going to use it. We have to think of the future generations and how we're going to protect it for them in the future. And Pope Benedict has written a lot about this in 2010. He wrote about if you want to preserve peace in the world, protect peace, you have to protect creation. And he was the first pope to make the Vatican green, so to speak, because he understood the beauty of creation, that we had to take care of it. John Paul II also spoke on creation and on the beauty of the creation and that we must protect it, that God entrusted us to protect creation and whatnot. In his encyclical, he wrote about that we have an obligation to the natural environment, that we are part of the environment. We're not something distinct from the environment. We have to care for it, protect it. And John Paul II, like I said, in his message of world peace over 20 years ago, he wrote on the same thing, that we had to protect nature. We had to realize that we are part of God's creatures. The universe all around us, everything, we have to take care of it. And John Paul II wrote, quote, "There is a growing awareness that world peace is threatened, also by a lack of due respect for nature." And this is true, because we go around bombing the heck out of each other and we forget about nature. We are so quick to try to so-called progress, but we're really regressing by destroying nature and everything. Because eventually nature is going to hit us back hard and we're going to have to start from the beginning. So we have to think of these things. And of course, recently Pope Francis has spoken on the whole thing. He has stressed in Manila when he visited in January that we had to show concern for the environment. And we had to be thinking about the effects of the climate, these typhoons and hurricanes that have been taking place. We have to be mindful of these people that are suffering from these storms caused by global warming and the pollution that we're putting in the atmosphere and so forth, the gases, the carbon footprints. And there's rumors that his next encyclical is going to be on the environment. He's going to focus on climate. And this is very important. And again, the Pope clearly believes that global warming is a problem. And we also have to agree that it is. We cannot put our heads in the sand and think that global warming is not a problem. It is. It pains me to hear some senators out there claiming that. I read somewhere that one senator, I don't know from where, from the South or something, said something to the effect that God will protect nature. It doesn't matter what we're doing to it. And that's not entirely true. I mean, God does protect creation, yes. But God also entrusted us to protect creation as well. And many times, God is not going to jump in to protect us from the stupidity that we do. And we see that in our lives, that God is not going to be there all the time like Superman, trying to rescue us from our own stupidity because we should know better. I mean, God did not create us stupid. We should know better. So he's not going to be there micromanaging, especially in situations where our stupidity gets the best of us. So on this Earth Day, I hope you listening take the time to pledge to save our planet, to protect it. Not only for us now, but for future generations. So they can enjoy this beautiful planet, this gorgeous planet. Because, not to take away it from Jupiter and all the other planets out there, and those that we're discovering via the Hubble telescope and whatnot, not to take anything away from them, because they are beautiful creations, but the Earth is gorgeous. It really is gorgeous. Beautiful planet. It's a gem in the universe, a gem in the solar system. May God bless and protect his planet Earth, our home. And we thank him for creating it and us. And again, the earth is gorgeous, and God is quite an artist, I must say. Thank you for listening. God bless. God bless the earth, and Mary keep.